My name is April Barrett, and I was 32 years old when my parents sold my apartment without my permission. 3 weeks before my sister Megan's wedding, I got a phone call that shattered everything I thought I knew about my family. My parents were laughing, actually laughing, as they thanked me for the wedding present. They had forged my signature, sold the apartment I'd spent 8 years saving for, and used the money to fund Megan's $100,000 dream wedding. They didn't ask, they just took. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was finding out my sister had been taking credit for something I'd been doing for 4 years. Before I tell you what happened at that wedding reception, let me take you back to the beginning, because to understand why this moment broke something in me, you need to understand the pattern. Growing up in the Barrett household meant understanding your place early. Megan was the baby, 4 years younger, impossibly charming, and the center of every room she entered. My parents didn't play favorites, they simply had different expectations. For Megan, the world was supposed to be soft. For me, it was supposed to build character. When we were kids, both of us wanted to learn piano. I was 10, Megan was 6. My mother signed Megan up for private lessons with Mrs. Henderson, $40 a week, every Saturday morning. "What about me?" I asked. My mother barely looked up from the checkbook. "April, you're old enough to teach yourself. There are tutorials on YouTube." I remember watching Megan skip out to her first lesson with a new music book. I taught myself chopsticks on her old keyboard. Nobody noticed. That became the pattern. When I wanted to join the school choir, I was told we couldn't afford the uniform. 2 months later, Megan got a $200 dance costume. When I complained, just once, my father sat me down with that disappointed look. "April, don't be selfish. Your sister is more sensitive. She needs more support. You've always been the strong one." So, I learned to be strong. I learned to stop asking. I learned that every time I spoke up, I became the difficult one, the jealous one, the one who couldn't just be happy for her sister. They'd been training me my whole life for what they were about to do. The pattern didn't stop when I grew up. When I graduated college summa cum laude, first in my family to finish university, my parents weren't there. They'd forgotten to book flights. They were too busy helping Megan move into her new apartment, the one they'd co-signed for because her credit wasn't good enough. "We'll celebrate when you're home for Christmas," my mother said. Megan really needed us this weekend. I walked across that stage alone. 8 years later, I bought my own apartment. No cosigner, no help, just years of 60-hour weeks, packed lunches, and a savings account I never touched. When I called to share the news, my father's response, "That's nice, honey. Hey, does it have a spare room? Megan might need a place to stay while she figures things out." Not "congratulations," not "we're proud of you," just "could Megan use it?" When my parents asked to keep my apartment documents safe in their lockbox, I handed them over without a second thought. They were my parents. I trusted them. That trust would cost me more than I could have imagined. 3 years before the wedding, my parents made a terrible mistake. My father invested everything in a can't-miss real estate deal. The project collapsed. They were left with a foreclosure notice on their door. I found out by accident. A letter from the bank arrived at my apartment, wrong address on file. I called that afternoon and set up automatic payments from my account, $2,100 every month. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want them to feel ashamed. I just handled it, like I always did. What I didn't know was that Megan had discovered my secret. She must have seen the email confirmation from the bank on my laptop, and instead of thanking me, instead of telling our parents the truth, Megan told them she was paying the mortgage. "I've been helping out from my PR salary," apparently she said. "It's the least I can do." My parents were moved to tears. Their baby girl, so selfless, so mature. They told everyone at church. They bragged to the neighbors. Meanwhile, I kept sending $2,100 every month, never knowing someone else was taking the credit. For 4 years, my sister smiled in my face while stealing my sacrifice. Then, Megan got engaged to Brandon Whitmore, old money from Connecticut, handsome, rich, perfect. His father owned the largest law firm in the county. His mother chaired charity boards. When Megan brought Brandon home, I watched my parents transform. They stood straighter, served the good china, laughed at jokes that weren't funny. "This wedding will change everything for this family," my father said to me privately. "Megan's future is our future." They started planning immediately. Not just any wedding, a Whitmore-worthy wedding. The country club ballroom, 200 guests, a 12-piece orchestra, fresh flowers from Holland. The price tag, $100,000. Money they didn't have. "Megan can't afford both the mortgage and the wedding," I heard my mother saying. "She's already sacrificing so much for us." I remember feeling confused. Megan was barely making $3,000 a month. How was she supposedly paying a $2,100 mortgage? But I dismissed the thought. I had no idea my sister was living a lie and that my parents were about to make me pay for it. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. "Honey," my mother was laughing, "we just wanted to thank you for the wedding present." I set down my pen. "What present?" "Your apartment, sweetheart. We sold it. Got a great price, too. Isn't that wonderful?" The room tilted. "You what?" "We knew you'd understand. You've always been so generous." "I didn't agree to this." A pause. My father's voice came through, patronizing and firm. "April, don't be dramatic. It's just an apartment." "It's my apartment. We're family. What's yours is ours. Besides, you'll find another place. You're so capable." Capable, the word they used when they meant disposable. "How did you even? I didn't sign anything." Silence. Then my father cleared his throat. "We handled the paperwork. You'd given us the documents years ago, remember? They'd forged my signature. They'd committed fraud, and they were laughing about it." I called Claire Donovan, my best friend since college, and one of the sharpest real estate attorneys in the city. "They did what?" Her voice went flat. 47 minutes later, she called back. "The transaction isn't finalized. The title company flagged signature inconsistencies. It's fraud, April. You could press charges." "There's something else," Claire said. "Your mom mentioned to someone that Megan's been paying your mortgage for years, called her the selfless one." My blood turned to ice. "That's not possible. I've been paying that mortgage for 4 years." A long pause. "Then Megan's been lying to them. She's been taking credit for your money." The room spun. My sister hadn't just stayed silent, she'd actively claimed my sacrifice as her own. "I need to see everything," I said quietly. "Every record." I drove to my parents' house that evening. My mother opened the door with a smile. I sat down across from my father. "By the way, how has Megan been managing to pay your mortgage all these years on her salary?" My mother's face lit up. "Oh, she's been wonderful. $2,100 every month, like clockwork." "Interesting. And she told you this herself?" "Well, of course." "Are we talking about me?" Megan appeared in the doorway. She looked at me and something flickered across her face. Recognition. Then she smiled. "Yes, I've been helping out. It's what family does." She looked right at me when she said it. She knew I knew, and she didn't care. I walked out without another word, but I wasn't done. Not even close. Claire spread the documents across her conference table. 48 payments, every single one from your account. Almost $100,000, what they're spending on Megan's wedding. "There's no way Megan could have made these payments," Claire continued. "She'd have to give up 70% of her income." I picked up one statement, my name printed clearly across the top. April Barrett, not Megan. Me. "When you show these at the wedding," Claire said carefully, "you're exposing Megan in front of her new husband and their family." I thought about Brandon Whitmore, about the Whitmore family name built on integrity. They deserve to know who they're really getting. Claire didn't argue. She just started making copies. That night, I found an old text in the family group chat Claire had accidentally been added to, from Megan, dated 3 weeks earlier. Don't worry about April's apartment. She won't make a fuss. She never does. My own sister. She'd counted on my silence the way you count on the sun rising. I printed the screenshot and added it to the folder. The morning of the wedding, I woke up in my apartment. My apartment. Still mine, still standing. I called Mr. Peterson, the buyer. I'd explained the forged signature days earlier. He'd withdrawn from the sale. The transaction was void. My parents didn't know yet. On my bed lay the bridesmaid dress, a shade of pink that washed out my complexion, deliberately unflattering. Beside it sat a manila folder. Inside, 48 months of bank statements, the original deed, the canceled sale contract, emails from my parents promising to keep my documents safe, and a screenshot of Megan saying I wouldn't make a fuss. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back was calm, resolved, ready. They expected me to smile, toast, and play my part. They had no idea I'd rewritten the script. The ceremony was beautiful. The vows were touching. Megan cried at all the right moments. And I waited. The reception began at 6. 200 guests settled into their seats around tables draped in white linen. I sat at the family table, the folder resting in my lap beneath the tablecloth. Then my father stood up, champagne glass in hand. "Family," he began. "That's what today is about. Sacrifice, coming together, everyone doing their part." I felt my jaw tighten. "I want to thank the people who made this day possible. First, to my daughter Megan, who's been supporting this family financially for years. Her generosity has kept us afloat." Megan ducked her head modestly. The crowd murmured approval. "And to April, who gave the most generous wedding gift, her apartment, so that her sister could have the wedding of her dreams." Applause. The morning of the wedding, I woke up in my apartment. My apartment. Still mine, still standing. I called Mr. Peterson, the buyer. I'd explained the forged signature days earlier. He'd withdrawn from the sale. The transaction was void. My parents didn't know yet. On my bed lay the bridesmaid dress, a shade of pink that washed out my complexion, deliberately unflattering. Beside it sat a manila folder. Inside, 48 months of bank statements, the original deed, the canceled sale contract, emails from my parents promising to keep my documents safe, and a screenshot of Megan saying I wouldn't make a fuss. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back was calm, resolved, ready. They expected me to smile, toast, and play my part. They had no idea I'd rewritten the script. The ceremony was beautiful. The vows were touching. Megan cried at all the right moments. And I waited. The reception began at 6. 200 guests settled into their seats around tables draped in white linen. I sat at the family table, the folder resting in my lap beneath the tablecloth. Then my father stood up, champagne glass in hand. "Family," he began. "That's what today is about. Sacrifice, coming together, everyone doing their part." I felt my jaw tighten. "I want to thank the people who made this day possible. First, to my daughter Megan, who's been supporting this family financially for years. Her generosity has kept us afloat." Megan ducked her head modestly. The crowd murmured approval. "And to April, who gave the most generous wedding gift, her apartment, so that her sister could have the wedding of her dreams." Applause. 200 pairs of eyes turned toward me. Megan stood up and gave a little bow, accepting applause for sacrifices she'd never made. "Let's raise a glass to our daughters." Glasses rose, People drank. Megan basked. And I stood up. "Dad," my voice was steady, "would you mind if I said a few words?" My father's smile wavered, but handed me the microphone. "The floor is yours." I took it. The weight felt right in my hand. "Thank you, Dad. I do have something to say about those sacrifices you mentioned." Silence. Absolute silence. At the family table, Megan's smile faltered. Her eyes met mine, and I watched the color drain from her face. "Since we're sharing, I think everyone deserves to know the whole story." I opened my purse and pulled out the folder. "I have documentation proving everything I'm about to say, so please let me finish." Mr. Whitmore Sr., Brandon's father, set down his champagne glass and studied me with focused attention. "My father just thanked me for giving up my apartment. I want to clarify something." I paused. "I didn't give it. I didn't sell it. I didn't even know about it until 3 weeks ago." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "April, what are you—" My father's voice was sharp. "I'm not done, Dad." I held up the folder. "I have the original deed here. My name, April Barrett, sole owner. I bought this apartment with 8 years of savings. I never authorized any sale." Whispers spread through the crowd like ripples in water. Brandon was staring at his new in-laws with an expression I couldn't quite read. "The good news for me is that the sale was never legal. I contacted the buyer last week. He withdrew immediately. The deposit has been returned. The transaction is canceled." My mother's voice cracked. "That's not possible. The money you were counting on. It's not coming." I turned to look directly at my sister. "It was always mine, and you knew that." Brandon pulled his arm away from Megan just slightly. Mr. Whitmore Sr. stood up and walked toward me. "May I see those documents?" I handed him without hesitation. "But that's not all," I said, turning back to the room. "There's something else you should know. My father thanked me for supporting the family financially, for paying their mortgage for years." I looked directly at my sister. "Isn't that right, Megan?" Megan's face was frozen, pure terror in her eyes. "Here's the truth. For the past 4 years, I've been paying our parents' mortgage, $2,100 every month. My account, my name, my money." The documents passed from hand to hand. April Barrett printed across every page. "You saw my email confirmation years ago, Megan. You knew it was me, and you told them it was you." Megan's voice cracked. "I can explain. You took credit for $100,000 of my sacrifice. Every time Mom praised you, every time Dad thanked you, that was my money, my sacrifice, and you stole it." Brandon Whitmore stood up slowly, staring at his new wife like he'd never seen her before. "Megan, you lied about it all." She reached for him. "Brandon, please." He stepped back. "I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want you to feel ashamed, but Megan took credit for my sacrifice for 4 years." I lowered my voice slightly. "I'm not doing this to hurt anyone. I'm doing this because the truth matters, and I'm tired of being the one who stays silent. As of today, I'm no longer paying your mortgage." My father's face crumpled. "April, you can't. We'll lose the house." "You tried to take my house." I looked at my sister. "And Megan took credit for keeping yours. Maybe now you can actually start paying it, since everyone already thinks you do." I turned to my parents. "I loved you enough to save your home in secret. 4 years, over $100,000. I never asked for thanks. Neither of you loved me enough to ask before taking mine." I set down the microphone. The click echoed through the silent ballroom. I picked up my purse and turned to leave. The silence lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then the room erupted. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my apartment, still mine, still standing, watching the sunset through my bay window. The same apartment, but everything feels different now. The fallout was swift. Brandon moved out that night. The Whitmore's lawyers drew up annulment papers. Megan's Kiar company put her on leave. My parents' house sold barely enough to cover the outstanding mortgage. For the first time in her life, Megan was contributing. No more pretending, no more taking credit, just real bills to pay. A letter arrived from my mother weeks later. "I'm sorry for everything. You deserved a mother who noticed. We failed you." I read it twice, then set it on my counter. It's a start, but words are cheap. Actions take time. My phone buzzed. A text from Megan. "I'm sorry for everything. Can we talk?" A year ago, I would have answered immediately, but I wasn't that person anymore. I typed back, "Actions, not words. Show me you've changed, then we'll talk." Maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't, but that wasn't really the point anymore. The point was that I'd finally stopped waiting for them to see me. I'd stopped needing their approval to know my own worth. I looked around my apartment, still mine, always mine, and smiled. For the first time in my life, I didn't need anyone's permission.